Hey, right, good evening. Welcome to the Year 10 Parents Information Evening for GCSE Combined Science and Triple Science. I'm here, Mr. Higginson, as the Head of Science. We've got Ms. Brown as the Deputy Head of Science. I'm here to talk to you today. We also have Ms. Hamer with us as well, and she's going to be acting as a moderator. So any questions that you have throughout the presentation, if you put them in the chat box, Ms. Hamer will, like I said, moderate through those and either interrupt me if it's the right time for the question, or at the end we'll have like a question and answer session. But please do type your questions in the box as we go. So as you should be currently aware, all students in year 10 are studying triple science right now, but we want to make sure that everyone has the right information about the differences and similarities between combined science and triple science. So hopefully this diagram makes sense to you. And you can see here that if we look at biology, chemistry, physics as three individual GCSEs, 2/3 of the content for each one is what makes up the GCSE combined science. So I know that sometimes people hear the name combined science and they feel like it's kind of a fluffy science. It's not actually proper science, as it were, but it does contain biology, chemistry, physics. It's a very robust course, but the triple science has the additional content for the biology, the chemistry, and physics. If we look at the differences between the two, this is how we would usually deliver combined science content. And as you can see, throughout the year, it's spaced out between term 1, term 2, term 3, both across year 10 and year 11. And very nicely, we get all the content covered, lots of time to revise, consolidate that learning, prepare for exams. And if we now look at the triple-sided topic map, you have all your additional content, which needs to be fit. Really dedicated to independent study, taking on a lot of that work outside of lesson time, outside of school hours. So biology, there's the same number of topics. However, each topic contains additional content. In chemistry, we have some discrete additional topics, such as chapter 14 and 15, which includes additional calculations compared to the combined science. We also have a much larger amount of organic chemistry compared to the combined science. Physics is somewhere between the two. We have some chapters with additional information, and then we have some additional chapters as well. But there's a lot more content that needs to be covered here. So the main difference at the moment is all students are on the triple science route as of now. They've been studying chemistry and physics this half term. And as you will hopefully have received today, they should have got their October checkpoint home with a current grade and a fine predicted grade for year 10 for chemistry and for physics. There isn't one for biology because we haven't taught a biology topic yet. That will come after half term. What we typically find is students who are struggling or underperforming with triple science, they are more suited to combined science. And typically when a student does combined science, they attain better. So if they're not doing very well in the chemistry and the physics, if they do the combined, they pretty much automatically get a higher grade because they're doing combined instead of the triple. And this is, again, just a bit of information about the workload. So teaching combined science, all the content is covered within the lesson time at school. Students get set homework as the homework policy states. We take that homework in, we provide them with feedback, try and help them consolidate that learning and improve. There is an expectation of independent study where they should be consolidating that learning at home as well, seeking guidance when they need it, and preparing for assessments. That's the same for any GCSE subject. And with the assessments, we have 5 reporting windows during the year. So you just had the first October checkpoint, there's 4 more during year 10. If they do combined science, that would just be 1 grade, but factoring in biology, chemistry, and physics as what that grade would be at that stage. If we then look at the triple science workload, triple science lessons are going to be very, very fast paced so that we can cover as much of that content as possible, which does mean there's going to be a very high cognitive load. We are going to be giving them lots and lots and lots of information in the lesson time. We are still going to set them homework on some of that content, and we are going to provide them feedback on it as per the homework policy. But there's going to be a much, much bigger emphasis on independent learning, and students need to be willing and prepared to do that, because if they're not going to see the success that they want to see in those subjects. Some of that is going to be down to them being very independent themselves. Some of it is going to be us providing them with additional booklets or project work to cover some of the content that doesn't get covered in lesson time. And in terms of assessments, again, 5 reporting windows. This time, instead of a single subject, each of the 3 subjects needs to be reported on individually. And that does mean we're going to have to fit in more assessments more regularly so we can constantly update you on all 3 of those grades and how they're doing in biology, chemistry, and physics. So the triple science workload is much, much more intense than combined science. And it really is only for the students who have the capacity to do that and the passion and the drive to make sure that they don't drop the ball. And I know that one of the things that often maybe concerns parents and students is, if I do combined science, can I do A-level sciences? Or I have to do triple if I want to do A-level. And that's not the case. If a student at English College or joining us from another school gets a 7 or above in combined science at GCSE, they can take on any A-level science that they wish, any combination of sciences that they wish. If the child does triple science, they have to get a grade 7 in that particular GCSE science to do it at A-level. So for example, they want to do A-level biology, they need to get a 7 or above in GCSE biology. Same for chemistry, same for physics. If a student does not get that grade 7 or higher, they do not get into A-level science, and there's no negotiation on that. They have to get 7s to get into the A-level sciences. So got some examples here to kind of hopefully put that into more of a visual image. So if we look at student A, they studied combined science, they got a 7-7, and they want to study biology and chemistry. And because they got that grade 7, they're allowed to study biology and chemistry at A-level. We then look at student B, they did triple science, they got a 7 in biology, a 6 in chemistry, and a 7 in physics. Now that student wants to study chemistry and physics at A-level, but if they didn't get the 7 in chemistry, they're not allowed to study it. They would only be allowed onto A-level physics. Look at student C, they also did triple science, they got 3 6s. They want to study biology and chemistry, but we would not allow them onto either course because they didn't meet that grade 7 requirement. And then we have student D, where they got an 8 for biology, 7 for chemistry, 7 for physics. They want to do all 3 sciences at A-level, and because they got 7s or above, they would be permitted into all 3 of those A-levels. So hopefully that makes sense to you. But as a school, it is a very strict entry requirement policy that they must get the grade 7 or above. Otherwise, they wouldn't be allowed onto that A-level course. And leading on to this, I'm going to pass over to Miss Brown, who's got a case study based on a previous school she worked at.
Hello. So just really, first of all, starting with echoing what Mr. Higginson said, is that the combined course for science is a very, very, very good GCSE, and it absolutely does prepare the students well enough to continue A-levels in sciences if they wish to do so, with those 2 excellent results. Now, what you can see on the screen here is I'm going to start with, now this was my set 2 science, so I had taught both set 1 and 2, and this is set 2. And as you can see, we initially had students that, for example, this is the biology data, and this was the chemistry, and this was the physics. But initially, through series of robust mock exams, which were very similar to the paper that they will receive in the final exam, we had students getting 5s, 4s, and a 4. And what we did was we looked at all of the data, and all of these students that have a red next to them, we actually moved them to combined. It wasn't that they weren't capable of studying the triple course, it was just they felt very overloaded with the additional content. This case study here, child X, I'd like to talk about in more detail. This is where the switch from triple to combined was a really, really, really good thing for this child. So as you can see, Ace biology, he was on a 5, chemistry was a 5, and his physics was a 5. But this child really wanted to study science A-level, and he wanted to do both physics and chemistry. Now, if he had remained on the triple course, unfortunately, he would not have been allowed onto study physics A level. In my last school, it was exactly the same entry requirements as it is at the English College. However, by shifting him from triple to combined, in the final results, he actually come out with an 8 and a 7. So he was able to then move on to chemistry A level and physics A level. And he ended up being one of the most top performing sort of students within the group. And as a result, finally, actually, his dream did come true and he went to the University of Manchester. So this was step 2, and it really, really did work out well. Their results were excellent in combined. They were allowed to move on to the A level that they wished to do so. It's not that the triple is harder, it's just essentially that it's just more content. Personally, in terms of physics, that is content within the triple GCSE that they will never come across again at A level. And then this one here is step 1. So as you can see again, just really looking at where they were following sort of the triple content, to then how much better it worked out for them to move to the combined. But I can guarantee every single one of these children in step 2, for example, that we did move to combined, they come out with an outstanding set of results, much better than having the 2 high grades rather than the 3 inconsistent grades that, as you can see, some here, because of the workload, we have like 4s and 4s and 4s, but they all at least come out with 7, 6. It was the lowest grade for that. This child here, so this is the one that I mentioned before. He got to combined, and he actually felt that the additional triple content that he kind of would have went through didn't prepare him anymore, because what he was able to do by switching to the combined, he focused on the high level content, but had more time to focus on the grade 8, the grade 9 content that cropped up, rather than to recall and revise the additional unit. And he actually went on to become a very, very consistent A-level physicist, constantly working on an AA star, which was actually above, and he actually came up with a better grade than some of the students that had done the triple content. But it worked out very, very well for child X, child Y, and child Z. They all, in terms of after sixth form, they went to their first choice university, and highly competitive university as well.
Okay, so what we are effectively asking moving forward is that we would hope the majority of you would trust us as the science teachers, as science faculty at English College, to choose the most appropriate course for your child so that they can achieve the best grade they possibly can. They can foster a love of science and learning while continuing their GCSE science route. Now, we also understand that there are some of you who definitely want your child to continue with triple science. And if you are one of those people, we would ask you to keep the Google form that you can either access through the link that's just here in blue, or by scanning the QR code at the top. What we would then do is we'll look at those, and if there's anyone who we are concerned about them continuing with triple, especially after the October checkpoint, we might have further discussion with you and your child about that, because we do want to ensure everyone is on the most appropriate course. Once we get all of that back, what we'll be doing is reevaluating the sets as they currently stand, because say we have students across the 6 sets, and students from each one will want to continue with triple, we would have to consolidate them into one class, and then we'd have to shuffle other people around to make sure that the numbers fit. So one thing I do want to make clear though is if a student is currently in set 1 and decides they don't want to do triple science, they would move out of that class to what's currently called set 2, but it wouldn't mean that they're in a lower set. It would mean they're effectively set 1 of combined. they just wouldn't be triple anymore. So it's not an indication of how good or bad your child is. It's just we would have to rearrange the groups to fit the decisions that get made after this. We will take your questions in just a minute, but one more thing I wanted to say is if your children feel like they need to talk to either of us about this, about making the right choice for them, please tell them to come and find me or Miss Brown at school tomorrow, and we will talk to them about their options and what might be the best route for them based on the fact that we teach them, based on their October checkpoint report, etc. But now, if we hand over to Miss Hamer, hopefully she's got some questions for us.
Yeah, thank you, sir. We've just had one question that says, can you please clarify what was handed out to the children today in terms of where they are and where they should be?
Okay, so the October checkpoint, the way it works is you have the Cat 4 target grade. Now that is the grade that they are expected to achieve at the end of year 10 from the Cat 4 test that they did this year. Typically that grade will be one grade higher for the end of year 11. So your child's report might say that their Cat 4 target grade for chemistry is a 6. And that means next year their target based on the Cat 4 would be a 7. And following that, you have the current grade, and that's a reflection of classwork, homework, participation, and assessment data that we have for your children. We did look at previous attainment from the end of year 9. We've also looked at how well they've done in the current topic that we've taught and the assessment we've done. And there is a difference between year 9 and year 10 though. When they were in year 9, we were working on a combined science frame with a combined science target grade for year 9, but now it's separate grades for the biology, the chemistry, and the physics. And following that, there's then a fine predicted grade. And what we do with that is we say, right, on where they're at right now, and their classwork, homework, participation, etc. What grade do we think they will achieve at the end of year 10? We're only, 4 or 5 weeks into the term, really, before we did those assessments and made those decisions and input the data. Some of those grades might be they might be cautious grades, but at the same time, we do believe they reflect where the children are right now. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you. And then the next question that's kind of linked to that is, if my child is currently at a 6 or a 7, should we be pushing them to the triple science? And then linked to that is, how do we know what level we're on? Now, I think you've answered the latter part of that question. Yeah. But if my child's at a 6 or a 7, should we be pushing them into triple science?
Okay. One of the things at the moment is, although they are on the triple route right now, the topics that we've done this half term are identical for combined and triple. So one of the things that is going to change after half term is the students who proceed with triple, we are going to be changing the pace at which we deliver that content. It's going to become much, much faster so that we can get everything covered ready for the end of year 11. So I'd say if your child is on a 6 or a 7 right now, that's amazing. That's really, really good. But that's based on a slower pace of learning right now that will change after the half term. And it's that kind of, is it a risk that suddenly when that pace changes, is that grade going to be maintained or is it going to flip backwards? So that's the one thing you need to consider is they've done very well at the moment, but are they going to maintain that when the pace of the work increases?
And we just had another question. My son's just moved to a British curriculum. How can one set of assessments predict his grade?
So as I mentioned earlier with the fine predicted grade, it is a cautious prediction. Ideally, it wouldn't be based on just one assessment. With the students who were at our school last year as well, we did factor in the end of year 9 assessments that we had as well. But understandably, new students who joined our school, we don't have that data to compare. We would obviously, next time we do assessments and the next report comes home just before the winter break, hopefully you would see an improvement there. But it's also, like I said, the intense pace of work that we're about to be shifting to after half term. Are they going to be able to meet that pace of work and improve from where they are right now? And that's a decision that the student needs to make, that you need to talk about with them, and they can talk to us about as well.
Yeah, and I think from my point of view, I've done a couple of information sessions on how the Cat 4 assessment data is generated. It's not an ability test sorry, it's not an attainment test, so based on prior learning, it's an ability test based on how students think. And that's kind of where we get our indicators from. So we do have information on ISAMs from prior sessions, if you wanted to have a look at where those predicted grades and target grades come from. So that's definitely available. Somebody else has said, the last exam, all the students have failed. How is that affecting the grade?
Not all students failed. The large majority didn't fail. They just probably didn't do as well as they wanted to. And that could be for a whole host of different reasons. As we've said, the target grades are now different because they're now 3 individual target grades for the triple sciences, and they tend to be higher than the target grade for combined science. The content is tougher than it was in year 9. That's part of it as well. And I also think the style of assessment is also different. So, for example, in year 9, we did the basics. We did, in chemistry, for example, solids, liquids, gases, changes of state, separating substances, and bonding, the kind of the foundation of chemistry. Whereas now, we're asking them to apply a lot more of that. And those application questions are more difficult. They take problem-solving skills and critical thinking skills to a newer level that they're probably not used to before. And they are something that needs to be developed. But again, the pace at which they're going to be delivered this content, can they also do that at the same time? Or are they just going to be delivered content very fast, but still not performing very well on assessment, or as well as they would like to on assessment?
And then somebody's written, they only have 4 hours a week for 3 GCSE subjects. Is there going to be a change to the timetable? And I think I can answer that one and say, at the moment, there's no plans to change the timetable. Obviously, the timetable is carefully considered every year for our students. And the team are very confident that they can work with what they have. Somebody else has asked.
There's one to add to that. They do, once they go from year 10 into 11, currently get 6 lessons once they're in year 11, as opposed to the 4 lessons in year 10. That's how the timetable is currently structured.
Okay. Somebody else has said, oh, sorry, I've just lost the question. At the time of admission, we were informed that all students will follow the same study regime until the end of year 10, and the decision to take triple science will be done at year 10.
I think that was potentially the intent, and what we've realized in this first half term alone is that it's going to be a huge ask to get a student to work all the way through year 10 under the intense pressure they're going to face in terms of the speed of learning, to then make that decision at the end of the year, when if they convert to combined science now, they can focus on that content a lot more, they can consolidate it, they can start to cement it into their longer term memory. Whereas if we waited till the end of year 10, they might then struggle to go back and learn the stuff that they didn't learn going through it so fast, and still then try and build upon it during year 11.
So potentially that's still an option, but we would recommend that certainly the majority of parents make the decision at this point, especially if you know that you're happy with combined and all the opportunities that combined offers. The next question is, where do we see how the results of their assessments reflect a GCSE grade? Meaning, how do we know today which GCSE grades they have based on their assessments so far? I think the question is about, what does my child need to get in each assessment for it to be equated to a GCSE grade? Okay,
I mean, at the moment, obviously, we've delivered in chemistry, we delivered chapter 8, in physics, they've delivered chapter 4, and they started to deliver chapter 5. For triple chemistry, that's 1/26 of the entire course. There's a lot that we still have to cover, and it wouldn't really be until the year 11 mock exams or the end of year 10 exam, when we test them on a large amount of content together, that we get a real understanding of how well they're going to do. But if they're struggling on the individual chapter-based tests, we wouldn't imagine them to suddenly do really well on an end of year test on multiple chapters together, because the amount of content, the amount of revision, the amount of different places those questions could go would be a huge ask. So it's going to change every time we do a report. That grade is going to be updated, but there's no guarantee it's going to get better. We would hope it would, but it would depend on how the child performed on each assessment that happens after this point.
Okay, so I think we've worked our way through all the questions that have been typed for the moment. So if we just give parents the opportunity to ask any more questions if they want to. Would you like to just reiterate, so the next steps that you would like people to take just whilst we're waiting for some more questions?
So, like I said earlier, we're really hoping that the majority of you trust us to make the right choice for your child so that we enable them to get the best science education they can, achieve the best results they're capable of, and are able to continue with the A levels that they would like to continue with in a couple of years' time. For those of you who are absolutely confident your child has to do triple science, they're capable of triple science, you want them to do triple science, could I get you to either follow the QR code or the link on this slide to complete the Google form for me, telling me that your child is going to continue with triple science, but also that you accept if they don't achieve grade 7s at the end of year 11, they won't be admitted into the A-level science courses.
Okay, so we've just got a little bit more clarification on that last question. If, for example, my child gets 60% on a test, what does this equate to? Is that a grade 5, for example?
It's different for the 3 different sciences, but because they're separate sciences, they have a different set of grade boundaries. So we do have a set of boundaries. I think the other thing to consider is for the last 2 summers, there have not been any external exams. So we're working on older grade boundaries. And this summer, hopefully, is going to be real exams going ahead. We'll have an up-to-date set of boundaries to see if there has been any real change. But I wouldn't want to promise you that this percentage is this grade, because that could change.
Yeah, it changes with exam boards each year. And also as well, the tests that they're doing at the moment, sir, correct me if I'm wrong, but will be on a smaller amount of content. So yeah, arguably would potentially be a higher grade boundary.
But also they're made from past paper questions, and we know students have access to those outside of school for revision purposes, and we do encourage that because exam technique is an important skill as well. But again, the exams that they will sit externally in the summer, they won't be made from questions they've seen before. They'll be brand new questions, and students need to be confident in applying their knowledge and sharing their understanding and not just regurgitating a memorized mark scheme. So that's another thing that we have to consider as well, is our assessments, they're not unseen material, which would give us the best indication of the student's true ability on their own.
Okay, so I've got another question here. Can my child take physics at A level if they choose to do combined science and get a level higher than 7.7?
Yeah,
100%. If they get a 7.7 or above in combined science, they can do any of the 3 A levels they want.
And it would also allow them to focus on the very difficult content that comes up in physics, because they would have more time to focus on the higher end rather than sort of focusing the time on the additional.
Okay, so somebody said, does the GCSE pool plus the triple science equal to 10 GCSEs, and the combined science would only equal to 9 GCSEs? Is there any opportunity to do triple science but drop a different subject, so only do 9 GCSEs?
Unfortunately, because the timetable is set and it's running, there is no opportunity for a student to drop one of their other options, because they would have those 3 lessons a week with no teacher. And we can't just have a student walking around the school for 3 hours a week with nothing to do. And we can't provide any additional science lessons because our timetables are completely full with everything else as well.
Okay, I've got another question. Is there an expectation that children would have achieved high test results now, for example, 80 or 90% in this term?
We do have some students who have achieved quite highly, yeah. There's always going to be a sliding scale of ability and how well students perform, but there are some students who have performed very well. Obviously, I'm not going to name names, but there are students we've given 6 minuses and 7 minuses to on their report because they did achieve highly. And I think we are happy with those kinds of grades. But again, we're also looking ahead, can they maintain that when we increase the pace of the work?
Okay, I think that's the end of the questions for now. So we'll just give parents a minute or two in case anything's cropped up.
And just in case anyone is writing something, again, please, if your children want to come and talk to me or Miss Brown tomorrow, to do so. We've got some free time tomorrow where they can come and find us, they can talk it through, they can ask us for our opinion, and we'll be honest with them, and we'll try and encourage them to choose the subject that's most appropriate for them, that's going to put them in the best possible position moving forward.
And I think that's the takeaway, isn't it, sir, that we really want students to achieve, and we're trying to set them up to make sure that they do achieve the best that they can, and that they can get onto all the A-level courses that they want to in the future.
Exactly, yeah.
Somebody's just asked, sorry sir, are the grade sets affected by the range between the high students and the lower students?
So the way we decided on the year 10 sets was we looked at both the end of year 9 assessment data last year, as well as their Cat 4 data from last year as well. So I know we've had quite a large number of new students joined our school this year, and we didn't have an end of year 9 test for them because they weren't at our school. But we slotted them into the sets based on their Cat 4 data that we were providing with on admission. So any student who had very high Cat 4 data, even if they weren't with us in year 9, has typically gone into set 1 or set 2, with students from the previous year who achieved very well at the end of year 9. Now, I know some parents might also think, oh, but my child's just joined, of course they're not going to achieve as well. But actually, this topic that we've just taught them for chemistry and physics is brand new. Our students hadn't done it before either. And it didn't rely on previous knowledge from content taught in year 9. So those students should be able to achieve at the same level as our previous students who remained at the school as well. But effectively, yes, how well they perform determines on which set they end up in.
So I hope that answers the question. I hope I didn't misunderstand that question. Okay, well, so we'll give it a few more minutes, but so are you happy that if nobody has any questions, parents are welcome to log off?
Yep, of course.
So we'll stay on and answer any more questions. I'll keep manning the chat box. But thank you very much for your time this evening. We hope that's clarified things for you. And you're more than welcome to log off from the session if you prefer.